Thank you, Roger. And thank you, Brigid, for that beautiful reading, because it's so appropriate. As Brigid mentioned, when they gave me some dates that were available for me to share with you all, and they gave January 15th as one of the options, I knew that this was the day that I wanted to speak with you, because today is, of course, Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And the whole issue of race and racism has been so on my heart and mind, as I think it has been for many, many Americans. And it was because of that that when a friend invited me to join her and another friend on a pilgrimage to the South this past fall, to Alabama and Georgia, I knew I wanted to say yes. And in that reading that Brigid shared, it talks about saying yes to the pilgrimage. And although it was an outer pilgrimage where we actually traveled to these civil rights places, more than that, it was an inner pilgrimage. Because as Americans, I really do believe that it's incumbent upon all of us to make this inner pilgrimage into our own souls, our own psyches, and to begin to free ourselves from the legacy and the illusion of race and racism. And so we traveled first to visit a friend of mine in Georgia, and then we went on to Montgomery. And in Montgomery, we visited the Legacy Museum, which, as I was there, I wanted every American to visit this museum. They have done such a beautiful and powerful job of really putting on full display our history as a nation in terms of slavery and racism. And it was just so compelling and mind-altering and heart-opening. So we visited there, and we visited then the memorial to those who have died of lynchings. And I'm feeling very emotional in this moment. And then we went on the next day and we visited some of the places, the place where Rosa Parks got on the bus, which actually I was interested to learn was just across the street pretty much from the place where the slave auction was held in Montgomery, one of the primary slave auctions. And I also want to say that this pilgrimage went to the South, but this is not a Southern issue. The South gives expression to it more overtly, but racism is in our very cultural DNA. And in this Legacy Museum, I was interested to learn that during the height of the slave trade, New York City had as many slaves as any other city, second only, that is in proportion to population, second only to Charleston, South Carolina. And so the wealth of this country has been built on this foundation of slavery and racism. And as they say in the Legacy Museum, slavery never really ended. It simply evolved. And after the Civil War, it evolved into convict leasing. And we see it continuing now in our day in our mass incarceration and the number of people of color who are incarcerated in the society. And I would suggest that in a sense, we are all incarcerated in this society. We are imprisoned by this idea of race and racism that has taken up residence in our mind and in our cultural expressions. I've talked previously with you all that we are in this global moment of this awakening of consciousness, of our shifting out of the consciousness of separateness and into unitive consciousness, knowing our interexistence with one another, and that this awakening is being accelerated and really is being demanded of us especially by the climate crisis, that we must leave behind this illusion that we are separate from one another, separate from the source of our being, separate from the earth upon which we live. So this awakening is upon us, this global awakening. And in our society, race, the idea of race and the construct of racism is one of the primary impediments to our undergoing this awakening of consciousness. Because race is a constructed idea. It is something that was invented in this country in order to justify the enslavement of people who were brought to this country to exploit their labor and to, of course, enrich the enslavers and the whole economic system of this country that depended upon this exploitation of labor. And so race, when we use the words Black or white in our society, we do not use these words as a description of a person's skin color. Rather, we use these words as a designation of a person's place in America's caste system. And I would highly recommend the book Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, who she compares the American caste system with the caste system of Nazi Germany and the caste system in India. And she looks at the commonalities of all of these caste systems. And I was interested to learn that the Nazis, when they were coming into power, were studying the Jim Crow laws in America to find out how to do this. And I realized that the Star of David that they compelled Jewish people to wear was a replacement for skin color. You see, in our country, it's obvious which caste we belong to because we're wearing it on our skin, in our skin and our body. In Germany, they had to invent some other way to designate people to a particular caste. So whiteness and blackness is simply an invention that we have come up with to designate people into this caste system. And one of the natures of a caste system is that you are born into it. You are born into it, and you spend your whole life in it. And that certainly is true of race in America. So race and racism is an impediment to our awakening to the truth of who we are, because you see, it keeps us, first of all, identified solely with the body. It encourages us to identify with the body as though the body is what and who we are. The body is the most important thing about our being. So that's one way that it keeps that race and racism keeps us beholden to that egoic consciousness. And obviously it keeps us beholden to the consciousness of separateness, of specialness, of supremacy, all of which are of the egoic mind. All of these are expressions of the thought system of the ego. So you see, race, it is so important for us to move beyond this and to shed this illusory idea, because until we do, we are unable to participate in this awakening of consciousness that enables us to become aware of who we truly are, which is divine beings, eternal, each of us a spark of the divine light, a thought of God. So on this pilgrimage, one of the moments that I'd like to share with you was our visit to the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. And the bridge was named after a leader in the Ku Klux Klan, Edmund Pettus. And the bridge continues to go by that name. And we all, I'm sure, know the story of the people in Selma, the African Americans in Selma, who were going to march to Montgomery, the capital of Alabama, to demand their rights to vote, because their ability to register to vote and to vote were being obstructed. And so they began this march. And as we all know, they came up over the rise. Now, this bridge, it's an interesting bridge because there's a rise in the bridge. It's not a flat bridge. There's a rise. And so you come up over the bridge and you can't see what's on the other side when you start up over the bridge. And so I and my two friends decided to walk this bridge as a kind of ritual, a kind of meditation. And as we began to walk across this bridge in silence out of Selma, I was really using it as an opportunity to make my own inner commitment to walk this way of justice, to walk this way of liberation. In other words, I was first going across the bridge, trying my best to tap into the mindset of those who were marching for their freedom to Montgomery. And I was aware as we came up over the ridge over the crest of this bridge, what they must have been feeling when they looked over and they saw on the other side of the bridge the troopers who were waiting for us, for them. Interesting that I say us. The troopers who were waiting for them. And I was just awestruck at the courage of these people to walk toward that, to walk toward that hostility, to walk toward that hatred, not as enemies of it, but as confronters of it, as people who were not willing anymore to be afraid or to be governed by fear. Better said, governed by fear, because I'm sure they were very afraid. So we walked to the other side of the bridge and visited a little park there where there are some monuments and things. And then as we began back the other way, I tried to imagine what it was like for the troopers, for the white people on this side of the bridge. And I felt as though I was able to tap into the fear in them that they felt as this group, this crowd approached. Because what this is symbolizing from that perspective, what this is symbolizing is this is the future coming towards us. This is the future of an inclusive society coming towards us. And there is something that was desperately afraid, existentially afraid of that. And I realized that it is so threatening to the white identity because we have identified ourselves as white. And whiteness, of course, in our society simply means, to boil it down to something very basic, it refers to being on top. It refers to being in a position of privilege. And so I could feel the existential threat of this that is evoked in people in that mentality. And I think I was able to really tap into it because of a blog post that I wrote. Actually, I was interested to see that I wrote it, and I published it 2 years ago today on January 15th. And I was really pondering the aftermath of the insurrection and all of these displays of white supremacy. And I was so troubled by it. And this, of course, is the shadow work that we all as Americans now are called to do. This is our shadow. And we saw that shadow coming forth in the insurrection, and we see that shadow coming forth in the movements of white supremacy. All of this content now is coming to the surface so that we can face it and heal it and liberate ourselves from it. So back then, in 2021, I was really asking for guidance, for a deeper wisdom about what is playing out in our society right now. And I felt as though, as I wrote this, I actually was receiving a wisdom that was much, much deeper than the personal self. So I want to just read with you a portion of this blog post. It is then the task of all people, especially white people in this country, to address the roots of this assumed supremacy, roots which exist in the mind. Do you recall, and this voice now is addressing me, do you recall how when you have done meditations envisioning an awakened Philadelphia, how easily you have been able to envision many ethnic groups giving expression to their unique cultural heritage in a beautiful tapestry of multiculturalism? But when it came to the white people of the city, you could not see it clearly. This is because white culture does not exist as any true expression of identity. Instead, white culture has rested on the idea of dominating those of other ethnicities and cultures. White culture in itself, apart from this role of domination, seems to be a void, a non-thing. This is in part what is occurring in the uprising of white supremacy. As the nation becomes increasingly multicultural, there is no sense of identity, no sense of selfhood for white people apart from that of the dominator. It is this restoration of a true and life-affirming identity that is needed now. Who are you as a white person? You are immigrants of many cultures, lands in which the skin color of the people happened to be fair. Can you see the absolute absence of meaning in this? How fragile an identity it is that relies upon skin color. Revisit your ancestral roots. Who were you before you became white? Before you became white, you were many things. You were the speakers of Gaelic and had a sacred relationship with the land, which you understood to be inhabited by entities not visible to the human eye. You were dancers around the bonfire at the winter solstice. You were creators of sublime music that touched the soul. You were tellers of stories that spoke of the transcendence of the human spirit. Shed this empty identity of being white and go deeper into your being. Celebrate who you are in your core, not in the color of your skin. You received a phrase recently in a dream, systemic gracism. This is where your society is headed, if you will it to be so, toward the establishment of systems that reflect goodwill toward one another and which will support all in their mutual thriving. A society that exemplifies and manifests grace. What you are witnessing at this turbulent moment in your country is that which must be seen and acknowledged in order for it to be healed, released, and transcended. It is opening the way for gracism to take root. So I would like us now to move into meditation. I'm going to bring up an image for this. And I invite us all now to close our eyes and take a moment to become aware of this moment, to be fully present to this moment, fully present to whatever is present in this moment. Present to the sensations in your body, present to the rhythm of your breath. Allow yourself to simply rest in this presence. Now allow yourself to become aware of how the idea of race has colored your thoughts, shaped your perceptions of yourself, influenced your relationships with others. Simply allow this awareness to arise and reveal itself to you, beholding it without judgment, without blame. Now allow yourself to become aware of how this idea of race has served as a blueprint for the society we have created together. Again, simply allow this awareness to arise, to reveal itself to you, beholding it without judgment and without blame. Now allow to arise within the awareness, your awareness, what the world becomes in the absence of this idea. Allow to arise within you the awareness of who you become in the absence of this idea. Feel how, as you release the idea of race, you become more and more able to experience the divine self you are. The divine self that is never shaped or confused by the erroneous ideas of the egoic world. Let yourself feel this light of the divine presence that you are. In your heart, let yourself feel this light of the divine presence that all beings are. Feel your heart rejoicing in this unity of all being. Feel your heart rejoicing in the truth of who you are. And now I invite us all to bring our awareness back and to experience the meditation song that Roger and the singing group will lead us in.
Here we go. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. And if you're at home, if you're just watching on your own, think of someone in your life to sing this to in your mind's eye. Here we go. You are the face of God.
You are the face of God.
I hold you in my heart.
I hold you in my heart.
You are a part of me.
You are a part of me.
You are the face of God.
You are
You're the face of love. You are the face of love.
You are the face of love.
I hold you in my heart.
I hold you in
Family. You are my family.
You are my family.